Hey there. Today I'll be telling you how to play Blood on the Clocktower. This won't be an extensive explanation, but it will be enough to get you started, especially if you're playing with someone else who already knows how to play. So I'll start by telling you about this actual game, Blood on the Clocktower. This is a social deduction game. So the main mechanic is that you're figuring out other people's secret roles, and you're going to use a lot of bluffing or misdirection. And then the skill you're trying to build is to identify what's the most plausible scenario based on all the information I'm getting from other people. And then you're going to have to convince others of this most plausible scenario to meet your goals. And I can tell you this is a really fun game, but according to Board Game Geek, this is also considered our #1 party game. So it is well received by others as well. And that's of today here in August 2024. And I played some other social deduction games. Maybe you have too, like Mafia or Werewolf or some of these here. And there are some key things that I think Blood on the Clocktower does better that you can look forward to if you've ever been frustrated by some of these things. One of the key big pillars is that you continue playing after death. So death doesn't end the game for you. You're not just going to have to check out and be on your phone. You can actually keep playing and keep being really integral in the game. It's also a lot more to the game than just lying. A lot of these social deduction games kind of devolve into lying, which doesn't really always feel that good and is kind of an exhausting way to play. So there's a lot of ways to be good or bad in this game and be useful rather than just directly lying to people's faces. There's also a lot of variety in this game. There's different casts of characters or different way the characters interact that mean you can't really solve the game quite as easily as you can with some of these other social deduction games. And there's a big emphasis on logic. And this is kind of like the lying thing where you can have fun as a good person. It's not, you don't have to just try to read other people and detect if they're lying or not. You can also use a lot of the information and the clues you have to build a plausible story beyond just trying to guess. So we'll talk about the teams in this game and their goals of each team. So there are two main teams. There's the good team, and they're made up of townsfolk and outsiders. And there's the evil team, and they're made up of demons and minions. If you're on the good team and the good team wins, regardless of if you're dead or alive, you're going to win. If you're on the evil team and the evil team wins, regardless of if you're dead or alive, you are going to win. So you really want your team to win. There's also always one storyteller in the game. And this is one of the unique aspects of Blood on the Clocktower. They don't play the game. They facilitate the game. They do a lot of the behind the scenes work. They are the narrator. They do all the mechanics of the game. And their goal is to make the game fun for everyone. And just because that is so unique, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the storyteller. And one of the advantages is that you can go up to the storyteller and ask them a private question at any time you want. You could clarify rules. You could say, hey, I remember you gave me this piece of information, but I can't remember it. Can you just confirm that to me? That might be something that they can help you with. You could even get advice, especially if it's your first time playing. You could say, hey, how is this character supposed to work? What are some ways I could play this character? And another big thing about the storyteller, since this is a bluffing game, the storyteller should support every bluff. So if you're pretending to have an ability that you don't have, or you're pretending to have information that you don't have, the storyteller isn't going to say, oh, hold on, you don't have that ability, or hold on, I didn't tell you that. They're just kind of going to try to roll with it. They're not going to break the rules of the game, but they are going to, for everyone, this is the case, they are not going to call you out if you're pretending to be something that you aren't. So let's break down these teams a little bit further. On the good team, I said it's made up of townsfolk and outsiders. And so there's some different player counts depending on how many people are in the game total, but most of the people in the game are townsfolk. So depending on player count, up to 9 players, down to 3 players, and they have useful abilities. And they are the bread and butter of the good team. Their abilities are going to help their team. However, on the good team, there are also outsiders. These people are on the good team. They want the good team to win. They win if the good team wins. However, their abilities are usually detrimental or not helpful. And they exist to balance the game so that there's people on the good side, but they aren't just all, hitting it out of the park with information or abilities. On the evil team, there is one demon, and this is the kind of the core of the evil team. There's one demon, and they are killing people. And then they have a supporting cast of minions, so that in a smaller game, it might just be 1 minion. It can be up to 3 minions in a large game, and they have useful abilities to support the evil team. So you're going to be one of these 4. You're going to be one of these 4 types of characters, and depending on what you draw out of the bag at the beginning of the game. And the goals for these teams, the ways to win, the good team, they need to kill the demon. And the second they kill the demon, that is an instant victory. For the evil team, their goal is, of course, to keep the demon alive to prevent that victory. And then they win if they can whittle the town of everyone down to just 2 players. So if just 2 players are left alive, the evil team wins. And by necessity, by keeping the demon alive, the demon has to be one of those 2 players. So the demon and one other player, the evil team wins. So we'll talk about some of the key mechanics for Blood on the Clocktower. And the first is the game flow. So at the very start, let's say I'm the storyteller, I'll go around, I'll have a bag, you'll reach in, you'll draw out a token, and that is how you'll learn the identity of your character. And then in the game starts in a night and day phase cycle, we start in a night phase. And on that first night, you might get some information, you might trigger some abilities, and then the first day will begin. And during a day phase, you talk to other players. Some abilities might work during the day. You might get to choose to use some abilities during the day. And at the end of the day, the town will execute a player. Or the town has the option, I should say, to execute a player. Once that execution takes place, we go back to a night phase. Now the demon kills. So they don't kill on the first night, but after that, every night they can kill someone. And then once again, some abilities might trigger during the night. And you'll continue through this cycle of night and day, until one of those 2 win conditions is met. Either the demon is killed or just 2 players are left. So we talked about executing. The town gets to execute 1 player every day. Up to 1 player can be executed a day. How does that work? Well, when the conversation during the day is ramping down, I, as a storyteller, I'm going to come around and say, does anyone want to nominate someone? And so there are some rules for nominations. So one is only living people can nominate, and they can only nominate once per day. So if I already died, I can't nominate. I have to convince someone else to nominate for me who is still alive. And then anyone can be nominated, but they can also only be nominated once per day. So if someone tries to nominate me and the vote doesn't go through, no one else can keep trying. They can't keep doubling down on me. They had 1 chance to nominate me that day. We'll have to wait till tomorrow to nominate me. Vice versa, if I'm alive and I nominate someone else and I want to nominate a 3rd person or a 2nd person, I can only nominate once per day, so I'll have to wait till tomorrow to nominate someone else. So the votes needed for execution is half or more of the living players. And that's important because the dead players are still involved, but you only have to meet half or more of the living players. And dead players can vote, but they can only vote 1 more time for the rest of the game, and they'll have a little token to help track that. So everyone might be involved in the voting, even if they're dead. So death is an important part of Blood on the Clocktower, and it's important to know this. Death is not the end. And if you're a good player, you don't need to fear dying, because yes, when you're dead, you will lose your ability, and that could be detrimental, and you will only have 1 more vote in the game. So that could also be detrimental. However, you can continue talking. All the information you have is still useful. You can still convince other people of things, convince other people to use their abilities in certain ways. Death usually is just a minor speed bump in your road to victory. So we'll talk a little bit about that night phase. Everyone's going to close their eyes, and then the storyteller is going to come around and communicate with some of the players who have abilities that trigger at night. And so the way that you'll know that is if you feel 2 taps, maybe on your head or on your shoulder, that's your prompt to open your eyes and engage with the storyteller. You're trying to do this all silently, of course. Maybe you have an ability that tells you some sort of number. So then that will be shown to you using the fingers on my hand. Maybe your ability is a yes or no question, like an answer to a yes or no question. And for that, I will nod my head for a yes or shake my head for a no. And maybe there's other abilities where you choose players or different things, you'll point. But the goal is to do all of this quietly. And when I do a little hand signal of putting my hands over my eyes, that means it's time to close your eyes again and go back to sleep. So there's a few different casts of characters, we could say, for Blood on the Clocktower, but the base one that you will probably start with is called Trouble Brewing. And so we'll go a little bit just quickly through all the characters in Trouble Brewing so you have a general idea of what's going on. And there's a sheet of paper that has all the characters on it, and you will have access to the sheet during the game. So you will be able to read every single type of character that could be in this game, and you have reference to that during the game. But we'll just go through them right now. So the first is the townsfolk. So these are people on the good team. That blue is telling you they're on the good team, and they have useful abilities. So there are 13 of these, I believe, and we'll just break them into a few categories. So there's these first 4 characters, and they get information only once, and that's at the start of the game. So they are going to get some sort of usually very valuable information, but it's only at the beginning, and then they don't get an information again. So this is a good example of where death doesn't really matter, because to them, That information can't be erased. They already have it in their head, and killing them won't get rid of that information. Then there's these characters, which are a little bit more maybe what you would guess, where every night or most nights they wake up and they do some sort of thing, or they have some sort of ability that's involved. And then these are special characters, and their abilities only trigger once per game. So in some specific circumstance, then their ability comes into play. Sometimes they can choose when to use it, or sometimes it happens when other people do something specific. So those are the kind of the three categories: information at the start, something every night, or a once per game ability. Now we'll talk about the minions. So these are on the evil team. That's why they have that red color, and they are the support to the demon. So it's okay if these guys die. It's not the end of the game. However, their goal is to support their demon. So there's 4 of them, and I'll quickly go through their abilities. So the poisoner is all about blocking other abilities, usually the helpful abilities of the good team. They can choose people and block their abilities. The spy has access to a lot of knowledge. They know what every other character is. They know, if people are being poisoned, different things like that. So they have a lot of information, and that helps them to be really good at bluffing to the good team. The Baron, we talked about those outsiders who are on the good team, but they have kind of detrimental or useless abilities. The Baron just adds more of those and reduces the player count of the useful townsfolk. So they're adding more outsiders and reducing townsfolk, and they have kind of a passive ability of just watering down the power of the good team. And finally, the Scarlet Woman is a backup demon. If the demon dies early in the game, the Scarlet Woman secretly becomes the demon, and the game continues without the evil team losing. So those are the 4 minions. Now we'll talk about the demon. The demon is the most important character on the evil team, and they are killing players. Every night they point at someone and kill someone that way, but they can also choose to kill themselves. If maybe they're in a hot spot, they're getting some suspicion on them, they can kill themselves, and one of their minions will lose their minion ability and become the new demon. So they can kind of jump ship if things are not looking good. Finally, we talked about those outsiders. They are on the good team. They have the nice blue color. However, they usually have unhelpful abilities. So depending on the player count, there could be 0 of them in play. There could be 2 of them in play. And then if the Baron is in play, like we talked about earlier, there could be 2 more added. So there could be up to 4 if the Baron is in play. So they have abilities that are useless or even detrimental. And we have been talking about poison. We talked about the poisoner, and there's also a concept called being drunk. So those are worth explaining just a little bit further because they can tell you a lot about this game. So being drunk or poisoned, mechanically, it works the exact same. If you are drunk or poisoned, you feel normal. You can use your abilities as normal. However, your abilities just don't work. So you don't know that you're drunk, and you don't know that you're poisoned. So you might get information. You might try to protect someone else. But I, as the story master, know that you're drunk or poisoned, and I might give you false information, or I might give you true information. It's just going to be random without you knowing. So it's as if you have no ability, but you think you have an ability. Anyone can be poisoned on any team. And then the drunk specifically is drunk, and they believe that they are one of the townsfolk. They think they are someone useful, but they actually aren't, and all their abilities don't actually work. And just to be clear, what the evil team has access to at the start of the game during the night phase, the minions will see each other, make eye contact with each other, and they will also have their demon pointed out to them, and vice versa. The demon is going to have their minions pointed out to them. So the evil team knows who each other are, but they don't necessarily know what characters each other are, what specific minions are in play. But they do know who their demon is, and they do know who the other minions are. Additionally, the demon will be shown 3 good characters that aren't currently in this game so that they have a better chance of bluffing as something that isn't immediately going to contradict with someone else. And then if you're playing a really small game with 6 or less players, these rules are slightly different, but this is generally how it works. So let's go through 5 key things to remember. You don't have to worry about all of this, of course, because at any time you can ask the storyteller for help. And that's the first key takeaway. If you have a question about the rules, you want to clarify something, you want to get some strategy advice, go talk to the storyteller in private and they can help you out. Another key thing to remember, which is hard, maybe coming from some other social deduction games, is death is not the end. You might, as you start to play, notice when you die, it really doesn't change the game that much for you. You are still involved. You still have a lot to say. You still have a lot of weight in the game. So don't feel like the game has ended for you if you die. And this might seem like a restatement of that point, but dying isn't bad. Some of the good team's abilities require dying or having someone die. And if you already have information and you aren't going to be useful to the team, it might demonstrate that you're a good person, that you're willing to die. And vice versa, as a bad player, it might be a gamble that you're willing to take to try to appear good, to be willing to die. So dying isn't bad, and you want to consider dying as one of the tools at your disposal. Another important point, especially if this is your first time playing, is you don't have to talk. If someone's maybe pressuring you or asking you questions, you always have the right to remain silent and hold back information. You can always bring up information further down the line, even if you're dead. Information can never be taken away from you. So if someone's pressuring you and you feel like it would expose you to reveal who you are or what information you have, you can always just hold back. And finally, a small piece of advice, which maybe you've already picked up on, if you're on the evil team, you don't want to buddy up with other evil people and kind of maybe create a core evil group that can all be identified at once. Your goal is to make friends and make allies with other people on the good team so that you can kind of get behind people's backs and help your team win. And just what to expect when the game starts. The game will start, like we talked about, in the setup phase, where you will learn your identity. You will draw out of a bag, you'll get a little token. There's just one of each type of character. So in this case, maybe you draw the monk. You see the blue, you know you're on the good team, and then you know what your ability is. So in this case, if you're the monk, you can protect other people from death, and that might inform your game plan. You want to fly under the radar, and you want to try to protect people that seem useful. You don't want to make yourself a target. And so then once you have that, you're going to put it back to the storyteller, and they're going to make use of that in their own setup. And then you're going to go into the first night phase. So then everyone's going to close their eyes, and some people might get some abilities, and some people might just stay asleep for the whole night. So thank you very much. And that's all I have for you. And I hope you enjoy Blood on the Clocktower.